Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today I'm talking about Dragon Quest. Yes, the OG. This game came out in 1986. It is like the granddaddy of all JRPGs. Now, I was always more of a Final Fantasy fan growing up. Final Fantasy was more on my radar than any of the Dragon Quest games. However, I hear that the Dragon Quest series is quite beloved. Maybe not so much in America, but especially our friends to the east really are all about Dragon Quest. So I thought it was about time that I gave this game a shot. Now, I played this on the Nintendo Switch. I bought it on sale for $3.60, I want to say, and it's definitely not the original version of this game. I don't know if they did like a remaster or a remake at some point, but just the visuals of the enemies and the music, this is definitely not the original version. So I can't really say what's been changed besides the visuals and the music. I don't know if there's been any quality of life features that have been changed, or I'm not sure about that, but I played the Nintendo Switch version just for clarification. The plot is very simple, just like the whole game. The whole game is a very simplistic approach, probably because I'm so used to really complex RPGs that since this is like the baby of all RPGs, I think that the scale itself is very small. Basically, the Dragon Lord, he stole the Sphere of Light and plunged the world into darkness, and so the king sought out a hero to help defeat the Dragon Lord, and he found you are the heir of some ancient hero, and so you have like the hero's blood running in you, so that made you a valid candidate to go on this epic quest. And also the king's daughter, the princess, has been stolen away too, so if you have the time, go save that princess as well. Now, saving the princess is not required to beat the game. However, you get one of two different endings depending on whether you save the princess or not. I actually really like the dialogue in this game. Everyone talks in ye old English prithee all the time. I'm reading this dialogue and I have to spend an extra couple seconds ciphering what exactly these people are saying in this old language, but it's fun. It adds to the whole aesthetic of the game and the world. The combat is actually very simple. If you've ever played an RPG before, even Pokemon, you are going to feel maybe a little underwhelmed. It's not exactly the most challenging game. The challenge comes from grinding up enough experience to level up and boost up your stats to take on harder enemies. But in terms of thinking carefully about like what kind of ability you want to use, that's not really here. Most of the time you're just going to be mashing that A button and using the attack, assuming that your character is strong enough to take on whatever enemy that you're fighting. And I boosted the tech speed up to 10, so it made it a lot quicker and easier to grind through all of these enemies, and you will have to do a decent amount of grinding in this game. Pretty much you're focusing on your attack stat and your defense stat. When you level up, you do get other stats too, and I think it depends on like how fast you attack or how much you can avoid an enemy attack. But as far as like the gear that you're gathering, the gear doesn't really affect anything besides the attack and the defense. Now, you do get spells, some for the overworld, some in combat. The only offensive spell that you really get that does damage is like a fire spell called Sizz, and then later you get an upgraded version called Sizzle. So that's kind of different from the Fire-a, and Fire-a-ga in Final Fantasy. You do get a spell that like puts enemies to sleep, but in my experience, most of the time they'll wake up pretty rapidly, so that's kind of pointless. Let's see, you do get one that prevents them from casting any spells, so later in the game you'll get some enemies that can cast sleep on you, and I would find Fizzle is the name of the spell. I would find I'd use Fizzle on the enemies who could potentially put me to sleep, because that could really make or break you. But other than that though, you're not doing a lot of strategy. Mostly you're just going to be mashing that attack button, assuming your character's strong enough. All the enemies are actually fairly cartoony and may I say even cute. A lot of them are smiling. I saw the infamous Slime from Dragon Quest. He's a very popular lower level enemy. He looks like a raindrop with a smiley face on him. But then you fight like these little flying guys with big old grins and fangs, and then you'll fight like these dragons who look very cartoony. It's a fun aesthetic, and it's a nice change of pace from playing a Final Fantasy game, for instance, where all the characters are super serious and scary. It's actually a very good entry-level RPG now that I think about it. It brings up the fundamentals, and all of these other RPGs have basically been built upon what this Dragon Quest game has set down. Now, you only get one character to manage as well, so you don't even have to equip a full party of 4 different guys. You're just worrying about your one character. There are some wonky systems in this game. For instance, the only way that you can save is by talking to the king. So if you're on the other side of the world, you're either going to have to walk back, or eventually you get a spell that teleports you back to the castle, talk to the king, and save. Now, this can be quite tedious, especially if you do have to walk back because you haven't unlocked that spell yet. Or actually what I found is the most efficient is just die, and then you reawaken right in front of the king. Now granted, I think you lose something like half of your money, and so that can be tedious, but they also have banks where you can store your money so you don't lose it when you die and get a game over and have to talk to the king. But then boom, you die, you're right in front of the king, you go ahead and save there. Now this wasn't too much of an issue for me on the Nintendo Switch because I could always just put the phone to sleep, but if you are playing the original, that would really suck because you pretty much just have to kill yourself in order to go save if you're too lazy to walk all the way back. Now, there can be some unfair enemies in this game, assuming that you're under-leveled, and sometimes, like I said, just that wrong scenario where an enemy puts you to sleep or they attack you twice when you were planning on only having them attack you once, you will die, and it just really sucks when you unintentionally get teleported way back to the castle in front of the king instead of progressing further in the dungeon or wherever you're at. Another interesting feature about this game are magical keys. Now, at the very beginning of the game, you're exploring this castle and there's all these doors that are locked. It says, oh, you can't get through without a magical key. And you're playing through the game and you go to all these cities and there's all these locked doors and you're like, how the heck do I get a magical key? And it's not even until like halfway into the game when you finally get access to purchase magical keys, and then you're like, okay, now the whole world has opened up, and then you get to go back to all these cities and unlock them. But it's just a weird game design, I think, that they put this wall that is so visible and just so within reach, and you can't bypass it until you play through more of the game. That being said, I did feel fairly lost playing this game. Just like most of the games of this time, I did have to pull up a guide after wandering aimlessly and granted, I did get to grind up a lot of experience fighting against a bunch of random enemies while I wandered around aimlessly, but you would occasionally go into an area with this overpowered enemy that would just absolutely demolish you, and then you have to start all the way back over again. So I think I did finally reach my limit and say, okay, where the heck am I supposed to go? Because in order to get to the Dragon Lord, you have to find these 3 different artifacts, and unless you do all this decoding and talk to all the townspeople in all the towns, then you'll feel a little lost in terms of searching for these 3 different artifacts. The inventory space is really limited, and in this version you can store a couple of your items with the bank, but I feel like you can maybe have like 10 different items at one time, and this wasn't really too much of an issue. It's not like you're carrying around a ton of items, mostly just your gear and magical keys, and then maybe a couple medicinal herbs. But it would get frustrating at the end of the game when you try to pick something up, like a seed of life, which boosts up your HP, and you can't because your inventory is full, so you have to scroll through your inventory and find something to drop, so then you can activate this seed to boost up your stats. It's a whole thing. One thing I did find interesting is at the end of the game, you finally find the Dragon Lord, spoiler alert, I guess, and he asks you, like, join me, join my side. And in most video games, I'm always curious how video games handle this, and, like, I think it's funny whenever they do give you the choice when clearly that's, like, the wrong choice, you know? So usually you'll say, like, yes, I choose to join you and join your evil cause, and then usually a game over screen will pop up. Or you might, if they put enough detail into it, you might get a small little cinematic with you like kneeling by the evil lord's side. But in this game, it kind of fades to black, and then you wake up at an inn, and the innkeeper is like, oh man, you must have had a really bad dream. You look shaken up. And I thought it was funny how they handle that, but also it really sucked because then you have to go all the way through the final dungeon again to get to the final boss. And I wasn't prepared for that, so I guess it was just another excuse to extend the length of this game. Because this game is fairly short, especially if you're following a guide, maybe like 5 or 6 hours. It's really not that big, even with the grinding involved. Overall, I am conflicted about my score for this game. Obviously, I have a ton of respect for it, and it was groundbreaking for its time, but in modern day, as a modern day playthrough, it wasn't too great. Now, you still got the high of leveling up and seeing the numbers go up and feeling yourself get stronger to take on stronger and stronger enemies. Your lizard brain is still happy about those numbers going up, but as far as like the actual gameplay and making decisions and feeling smart when you overcome these obstacles, it just felt like a numbers game. And I just thought that the game was okay. So we're going to give this game a 2 out of 5. Like I said, tons of respect for it, but it's just an okay game. Well, guys, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about Dragon Quest, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!